Directly.
Hey, we did it.
You did it. I didn't know for sure if it was going to work.
I
How
know.
are you?
Thank God. Thank God. Things are good. I'm glad we finally connected. Thank you.
Oh, you're welcome. So what's up?
So, yeah.
You
Well,
s-
as I don't know if I told you much about some of my work this year, but uh, I'm going around interviewing all sorts of Jews. um,
okay.
it's I'm at the point, after seeing conservative track to, 25% over the last 10 years and watching the subsequent shrinking of the American Cantor, because
Uh-huh.
fiscally less people are showing up and congregations are cutting budgets and whatnot, that there has to be another conversation out there about what we can create, about
Okay.
what are people thinking and what are people feeling, and how can we rejuvenate Judaism, because after 30 years of sort of being in it, like um, there's a
Mhm.
um, there's a there's a large part of me that doesn't want to see it die. In fact,
Of course. Yeah.
yeah, and I would much prefer to see it live and thrive. And so I'm hoping
Mhm.
to sort of have a new conversation, and it's wonderful. And I want to be able to then, on this website, from these recorded interviews, I'm interested in sort of creating a fresh current of ideas that can then sort of,
Mm.
inspire people to come back to the our great sacred wisdom. And so,
Mhm.
and as far as inspiring people and coming back to the wisdom, you know whether it was in the hallway of the Concord with your guitar, or whether it or on stage singing that beautiful Marav that we talked about, honoring your mom's memory, or any of the, I don't know how many dozen of albums you created uh, through your work with Safan,
Mhm.
but you've always inspired me. And so I
Well,
wanted,
thank you, Ken.
yeah.
So you're going to ask me to come up with a solution to the
Well,
to
actually,
the
well,
general malaise of,
I,
of the Jewish people.
well, I was hoping, well, I was hoping actually just to have a conversation with you, and
Okay.
and if it happens to evolve into like my asking you specifically, how to, what you see as, where we are and where we might go. But I was interested in, first of all, tell me about your background. Like, where did you grow up? How did you find the synagogue? In your life, when did you know? Tell me about your musical growth. What was it like living in your home, your family, and all that
Okay.
stuff.
I can do that. You ready?
I'm ready.
All right. So I grew up in Baltimore, where I am now, in an modern Orthodox synagogue called Beth Jacob, and our home was we were Shomer Shabbos and kosher, and we every Saturday morning I was in shul. Um, I was one of the in the junior congregation, one of the leaders of junior congregation, and as part of my early training in Baltimore, because I had a nice voice, I started singing with this other fella whose name was Steve Glasser, who was in my class. And one year he got a job on the high holidays as a boy soloist in a synagogue for the high holidays, and he got paid, And I said, "Oh, I could do that. If he can do it, I can do it."
Right.
So I was hired at age 10 to be a boy soloist in this place called Petah Tikva, which was a little shtibala with the fabulous cantor. His name was Hillel Lipsikis, and he was it was an Orthodox place, but he unlike the cantor at my shul, which was Beth Jacob, was not was totally about people joining in and singing rather than listening to him. You know, I mean, he had a nice voice, baritone voice, but he always threw in tunes that people would recognize. You know, even from operas and stuff.
Really?
While he was davening, and yeah, so it renewed my. Because when I was young, people said, you should become a cantor, and I just very much disliked the cantor at my synagogue, who was a real egomaniac. He was a kind of a Richard Tucker voice, and his name was David Jacobs, and he just wanted people to listen to him, and he thought the world of himself. So we kids couldn't relate to him at all. And anyway, so Hillel Lipsikis brought back the idea of being a cantor was okay. Still, my musical journey went far afield because when my parents wanted me to be a doctor, and I went to pre-med for 4 years, but ended up just getting a degree in biology. And then the Vietnam War came along, and I wasn't going to be a doctor, so I couldn't get a deferment, so I went to rabbinical school. And I went to HUC Rabbinical School in Cincinnati for 2 years, one in Cincinnati and one in Jerusalem. And when I was in Jerusalem, I became more involved in music because I was always playing guitars and things. I learned all these instruments as a kid.
What other instruments did you?
In Israel, mandolin, banjo, harmonica, jug. I was in all kinds of bands.
It sounds like what type of bands did you just create them with friends or people from the synagogue or?
Yeah, with friends. Yeah, we had jug bands, not with synagogue people. There was people in my high school and friends.
So tell me about that experience. How did that experience shape your life?
Oh, that was great. It was just all about performing and the music could be real fun. It was all about fun. In college, I was in a jug band too, and we actually did a wedding, a jug band wedding. Somebody hired us to play their wedding. It was funny. So we
Are you talking about?
We played the broad in undergrad school.
Yeah, are you talking about like you take a jug and you blow on the top of it?
That's why they're called jug bands. They go that kind of stuff.
And depending
sort of like a tuba.
Wow.
Yeah, and then and we had a washtub bass and washboards, stuff like that. Anyway, that was fun, a lot of fun. And
did you write music for that band?
No, we took old jug band music, old styling music that was written in the 40s and earlier. The stuff, Louis Prima, and stuff that was written in a lot of folk music. I played a lot of folk music. Then I went to Israel in rabbinical school, and I got hooked up with a harmonica player, and we started writing songs because he was a poet. His name was Simon Buchman. He came from London, and he and I wrote some songs together, some blues songs and things like that. And, I said, I can do this, but I don't know what I'm doing, So I decided to enroll in the Reuben Academy, which is now the Jerusalem Academy. And when I got there, it was the end of my first year in rabbinical school in Jerusalem, and they had already started the 4-year program that would continue for 4 years in composition, and so I entered that program, but I couldn't go to the regular classes because my Hebrew wasn't strong enough at the time. So they assigned a guy who was an American to tutor me and get me up to speed, so I could enter in the second year. And then I stayed 3 more years, and I left rabbinical school and studied full-time music. And then I went to Boston, and at the end of that time, and because I was interested in jazz, and I wanted to go to Berklee College of Music, which is very popular in Israel. Berklee is well known for the jazz department, and studied there. I studied at the New England Conservatory, but all this time I was still davening on the high holidays. I would take a gig at different places for high holiday as a cantor, and sometimes as a rabbi, as a kolbo, because I was, had my student pulpit as the rabbi. It was in Hibbing, Minnesota. I even came back from Israel in the end of the summer to do this. So that continued, and then in Boston, some fellow from Peabody came to me, and his name was Irv Schulman, and he said, I saw your name on the list of people who signed up to do high holiday services, and I was already playing with Safam at the time. I had met them early on when I was in Boston, and he said, I have a good feeling about you. I said, well, I've already committed to the high holidays. He says, no, I don't need the high holidays. I need somebody for the rest of the year. And I said, well, I haven't done that since I was a kid, And he said, that's all right, we'll get you up to speed, It was Ner Tamid and Peabody, and the rabbi was Abe Moore, and his wife, Oliver Shelton, was Vicky Moorheim. Vicky was a musician, so she gave me tapes and stuff, and I used to listen to the service on the way up to Peabody for Friday night, things like that. It was amazing. And, I was kind of thrown into the water there. It wasn't making very much money, but it was just a way of me getting back into the Cantor. And then I started studying with Gregor Shelton to learn the role of a cantor, and I got a job in Sharon, Massachusetts, where I stayed for 14 years. The person there now is Jeff Klepper, who's actually the cantor there now. Anyway, I tried out, I had no inhibitions as far as what kind of music I could bring into the synagogue. The rabbi had to hold me back from doing all kinds of crazy things, but I was, the congregation loved it no matter what I did. They wanted as bizarre as I could bring, And I was always kind of breaking out of the box. I think the second year I was there, I had the audacity to hold a composers competition, and just put the word out. We had a prize that just no limitations. You write a song, and if you win, you get this prize, and we get to sing it at my little shul in Sharon. And Josh Jacobson, who I knew very well, and I think we had Hank Isnetsky, who I had met in Boston. We all were judging the pieces. So we had some pretty high-end judges as far as that goes. Anyway, thing that I did early on at Sharon was they had a little organ that they would play, a little electric organ, and it was such a terrible sound and so limited in the way it could accompany. And I'd heard about this thing called the Kurzweil 250, which was the first digital instrument, first digital keyboard made. It was made by Ray Kurzweil. And we got the Kurzweil in. It was giant. It was this huge piece of machinery. And the guys from Kurzweil came in and demonstrated it for us. It played the whole orchestra, It had great sounds on it, the full string stuff. And that became our instrument of accompaniment.
Excuse me for 1 second.
The whole world of music.
Pardon me for one moment. Pardon me. Someone's at the door. Excuse me. I am on the phone, but if you go straight back, my wife should be in the bedroom. Everything's all clear, so you can go in. Is the front bedroom door? It's the one that leads out to the back. Oh, glass. Kim, Mark is here. I beg your forgiveness. So sorry to interrupt.
Anyway, I was part of this revolution of instruments in the synagogue, and eventually a lot of people started playing guitars and stuff. And it's back in the 70s and the early 80s. And I went into every synagogue contract. People, I was with Safam, and that they had to allow for me to be away most Sundays, a lot of Sundays. So in a sense, my role as a cantor was atypical, because most cantors did a lot of their work on Sundays, and I didn't. I was wired to do, but they just didn't have me on Sundays.
I'm sorry.
Anyway,
I just lost that. You kind of froze up. Can you say that last piece again?
Sorry. I did not neglect any of my duties.
Right.
But because of FAM, they didn't have me on Sundays. They couldn't count on me being there Sunday. Because the FAM was on the road a lot. And then when that started to be less of a commitment, I moved to a much larger synagogue, Oave Shalom in Boston, and we moved in eventually after my son graduated high school. And in Brookline, we were that was an old synagogue that is the oldest in Massachusetts. That it started as an Orthodox in the 1840s, and then became a Reform synagogue. So it had a lot of what I was looking for, a long tradition, and a lot of people who would just like all the different music from every era, because that's what I knew. I didn't know so much the most modern Reform stuff, but I knew a lot of the old conservative things, and they were fine with that, So then I was there for 14 years. So then I moved on to this place in Lexington called Temple Isaiah, which kind of very involved in the Reform movement, and some of their rabbis were leaders in the Reform movement. So that actually prepared me for this synagogue, Baltimore Hebrew, which is an old stalwart in the Reform movement. And Lexington didn't work out for me so much because they had never had a cantor before, so they weren't ready for me. They couldn't appreciate it. So anyway, but that all worked out. I ended up back in Baltimore. My many cousins here.
Oh, that's lovely.
So that's history. But as far as what I've seen over the years, up until more recently, I think the reform really moved very strongly in getting a lot of people involved and things. But now recently, the movement, there's been a contraction, as you say, and the idea is that people, unlike my generation, they don't feel an obligation to belong to a synagogue. So everything is done like everything else in their life on a cost-benefit basis, and we have to justify the cost of belonging to synagogue, by what benefits they get out of it, which wasn't always true. I don't think anybody thought about it. They might complain about the cost, but they didn't think what was the benefit. They just assumed that you needed to belong to a synagogue in order to be part of the Jewish people back in the day. But now, anyway, what else you need?
I lost you again. It's unfortunately the connection's kind of going in and out, and perhaps maybe. But you said, and now ... I didn't hear the kicker.
Oh, and now the obligation to belong to a synagogue is not part of their mindset. In our day, in order to be Jewish, it was just an obligation, and you didn't think about the cost and the benefit.
Right.
So
right.
now it's run on it's run by getting for this money I'm spending to belong to a synagogue.
Yes.
And that's a different model. Wouldn't you say? Don't you think?
Totally agree with that.
Right.
Ever since the corporate mentality has entered the spiritual home, we've suffered. We've definitely suffered. I wanted to ask you. Please.
Go ahead. I can't hear you. No. I said it again.
Oh, okay.
You wanted to ask me something.
I wanted to ask you a couple of questions about that which you've just spoken about. Earlier in the conversation, I was so interested in a couple of pieces. You talked about being involved in the revolution that sort of began to incorporate musical instruments in a worship service. And, the sense that, there I was, a newbie as a cantor, willing to try things like, original musical compositions with a great series of judges, and you were trying out new things. And tell me about what it was like to be in that period for you of all this dreaming and innovation, and how was change received by the communities that you served?
My community was very receptive to what I brought, but I would say that just like any big change, it was resisted. There was a lot of resistance from the people who had been doing things the same way the whole time. The Cantor's Assembly during my early days in the 80s, they first allowed women. But before they allowed women, I remember I forced the issue at a Hava Nashira that I was asked to lead, and I asked Ricky Lippitz to join me up singing during the Havana Shira, and boy, did I get some flack for that. Because they hadn't voted it in yet, you know. But Ricky has always, since that time, has always been a big fan because, you know, we really kind of forced it. Sometimes you have to press beyond the boundaries in order to get things done. And I've always, I haven't been shy about that.
What was it about that particular issue that compelled you?
It just it seemed like both the issue of having instruments in a synagogue and incorporating the female voice in the synagogue, there didn't seem to be a real reason why you wouldn't be able to use that precious source to express your prayers, because you know, to deny yourself that seemed illogical to me, and I didn't think that there was a coherent reason. I don't, you know, whatever the traditional reason just didn't speak to me.
And for those people that were animated by the instruments, what was their response? Do you remember? I know it's a long time ago to when instruments were first brought in. What were their words or quality of their?
Most of them were very excited, you know, to hear some good instrumentation. I mean, when I was in the Reform synagogue in Sharon, it wasn't uncommon to have an organ, but the organ was such a terrible sound that anybody who was musical at all knew I was making an upgrade.
Was it that you were taking traditional material and setting it beautifully with, let's say, other string instruments that was attractive, or was it the fact that attendant with the instrument came a new repertoire?
Both. You can use the traditional stuff and the new repertoire. It just opened up all kinds of things. It just opened the limitations. For instance, the same way a female voice opens up the range that you can incorporate in your arrangements. I mean, no matter how high some of these male singers sing, which is my theory as to why the high tenor became so well established in Jewish worship, because they wanted to engage that alto range of the female voice in their services. But you can never get as high as a true soprano, so you're missing that whole spectrum of it doesn't seem logical.
Let me ask you something, just speaking from the heart for a moment. What is it in that particular sound? You know, the alto, you know, soprano range. What is it in that quality that is so evocative that you were willing to go out on a limb and right in the middle of an old boy network which hadn't yet, you know, taken on women as part, bona fide, talented, gifted spiritual singers who are women as part of the Cantor's Assembly? What was it that in that sound that drew you? Or was it not the sound? Was it the people who were creating the sound that you were attracted to?
There's a little of both. The fact that you could open up the range of what you can use for. I'll give you an example. Safam, in order to have a four-man arrangement of music, we had Danny Funk, who could sing way up to high D even. B flat, he hit a D on some songs. B flat was, you know, pretty easy for him, and his voice went way up, so you could put all these harmony parts under that voice, and it's very rich. So the richness increases the more space you have in between. You know, that's part of your musical palette. So also, there's women who have wonderful evocative sounds in their voices, and they should be able to share that with the congregation.
Right. I remember his Amar Rabbi Elazar when he hits the high Z up top.
Right. Yeah, that's right.
Let me ask you something.
And we
about...
had Joel. We had Joel who could sing a low D with no problem. That was on Lecha Do D when he went way down.
Yeah. That's really interesting. Talk to me about Safam. When did you first come in contact with the people there, and how did the group evolve, and what was that time like with them?
Well, I was living in Boston when I was going to music school. I was living in a group home, which was a co-op. That was very popular in those days, and may still be, I don't know, during college days. And there were 10 people there was a possibility of 10 people in our house. We never had 10, it was always looking for one more, or, there's always an opening. And it was great, it was very free and co-op-y and great. And one of the fellows there was a lawyer who worked with Dan Funk's wife. His name was, I can't remember, but anyway, it doesn't matter. He had heard from Dan Funk's wife that they were looking for somebody to join Safam. And he knew that I had written some Jewish music, and as part of my I had written parts of the Orphan Queen, that musical that I wrote. You know about that? And we called it Esther at the time.
Ah.
And so he had attended one performance of that. I was teaching. So he introduced me to the guys in Safam, and we hit it off, and I became a full member of the group. It was early. It was during their first year of existence. They had a couple of already written to the band, and we started playing that as well. We used to play a lot of the Hasidic Song Festival pieces that was popular in that day. And
was this the late 70s or
Karl Bach?
Late 70s, early 80s?
It was early 70s. No, it was early 70s. Our first concert, their first concert was in '74 or in December, and I joined in, I think, March. And so it was mid '70s.
Tell me about like your relationships with these people, and like, for example, how did the creation of music in the group operate? Was it you brought in one of your original tunes and then it transformed? I mean, how?
Yeah, then we when you do music, when you write music, talk yourself and listen to yourself and stuff. But the most efficient way of realizing the potential in a piece of music is to have it played by an ensemble. And if the ensemble gets along, they can make suggestions. Let's put an extra measure here, or do a different ending here, or maybe it needs a bridge, that kind of stuff. So the collaborative part of it was during our practice of the song. And then even sometimes during the time when we would play it, it would evolve a little bit. We said, well, let's leave out this long opening. We'll do it right from the chorus or something. Whatever. There's a collaborative part of it, but a lot of the writing was an individual act by me or by Joel, and we would bring it to the band. And sometimes we'd bring things that were rejected. We didn't think it was either our style or it wasn't good enough or wouldn't translate to our band. That kind of thing.
How long?
Like, I'll give you an example.
Yeah.
Go ahead. So one example would be photo albums. That piece that I wrote on the Holocaust.
I may. I'm not. It doesn't come to mind. I probably, if I heard the melody.
Well, there's three parts to it. One has the Manishtana Laila Haze Mikola Leilo. And it's the whole thing is a story about somebody who's escaped from Europe, like Gregor Shulkin did, and he was in the Holocaust, and he left his whole family behind, and he got a new family here. It's just a whole story. It's a Holocaust story. So it's pretty heavy, it's pretty dark, and that was the struggle for the guys in the band at first, and we didn't know whether we could pull it off as a rock and roll band, but we did.
Let me ask you about that. Was Shulkin the inspiration of that song?
He was, yeah. And the whole idea that being a Jewish songwriter, it would be wrong not to tackle that subject. It took me a long time to figure out how to do that and still remain in the pop mode for some. But I figured it out because the thing that came to me was that you could do it as a looking back in a photo album and not reliving these things. You really live it through your memory. You can relive it in that way. In the photo album, the pictures would take you on a journey in your memory.
It's beautiful.
So that worked out real well. Yeah.
When you studied with him, what was it like to study with him? And apparently you got fairly close with him for him to talk about him losing his entire family in the Holocaust.
No, he was a very open person. All of his students, I describe my sessions with him almost like going to a psychiatrist. We would talk about everything. It wasn't just music. It wasn't just Khazanut. It wasn't your voice. It was everything. There was times when I'd go over and he'd be making dinner. Recipes, how to make things. He was quite a character. He was an amazing guy.
I lost the first part.
So yeah, I studied with him for. Oh, the first part was that we would talk about everything, and not just Khazanut, not just your vocal production,
right?
Not
right.
just. He would talk about, what it means to be a cantor, and the kind of things you're going to have to put up with people and how to deal with people. It's great. He was, the best kind of training. I didn't realize it as much until later on how much he gave me in those sessions.
What did he give you?
Well, he gave me musical knowledge. He gave me knowledge about how to be a cantor in a community and have to deal with difficult people and this and that. And he gave me, like I say, he taught me some recipes how to cook, how to be a Jewish cook. He was just an all-around guy.
What was it like to be in his presence? How did you feel with him?
Well, I just felt I didn't feel in awe of him as much as just very comfortable, like a father figure. He was well past his prime as far as a singer. And, was
I'm so disturbed.
he was what?
I can't. And I didn't hear anything that you just described in the last 30 seconds. The connection is so bad. I'm so
sorry. I mean, it would probably be easier if it was just a phone call, right?
Well,
a phone call.
Yeah, how about this? Can I keep this? Can I talk to you while you keep a phone handy on speaker?
Oh, that's the thought.
Here, let me call you. What's your phone?
You think that would?
Oh, you're on your phone now, right?
All right. No, but you can call me on my Temple phone.
Okay.
You ready?
Yeah.
410.
Right.
764.
Right.
1587. And just ask for me. The office will pick up.
Congregation, this is Jane.
Hi, Jane. This is Ken Cohen calling for Cantor Solomon, please.
Hold on, please.
Thank you.
Hold on just a second.
Appreciate it.
Hello? All right, thank you.
Okay, can you hear me on the phone?
Yes. Yes, I can. What I'm going to do is I'm going to see if I can turn down the volume here.
Okay, that'll be good.
Hold on a second.
I'm waiting for it. I muted you on my phone because it was delayed.
Yeah, can you hear me now?
I can hear you on both of them. That's not good.
All right, I'll tell you what. Let me try this. Let me try to actually call you back on FaceTime, see if we can reestablish a connection. If that doesn't work, we'll just go to the phone.
Okay.
All right.
What are you gonna do?
I'm gonna try to FaceTime you one more time.
Okay, I'll end it.
Okay, bye-bye.